So I think we can hear. I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order and roll call. I think we see that we have 3 members of the executive committee here with us today. And we have Chrissy with us as a guest, who will be official after the first of the year. And Emily and Haley are with us, as well as Linnell. And I do see Sonia is here. Wonderful. So we are almost full strength. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded by Dawn and Sonia to approve the agenda as presented. Without objection, that motion is approved. So we'll go to number 3, which is a discussion that was requested that the executive committee have about meeting venue in person versus virtual. And this was requested to be put onto our agenda by one of our members. And we have the opportunity right now to discuss that. I think, Haley, you were going to talk about that with us.
Yes, so I was approached by a board member and asked, and she had said that she thought the full board should have a discussion at a full board meeting about in person, whether to continue having virtual meetings or whether to go back to having in-person meetings. And she expressed some frustration with virtual meetings and thought that there should be a return to in-person meetings. And so I just am bringing that to you all for consideration about whether to add that topic to a potential future meeting.
Thank you, Haley. So I think that sentiment has been shared with all of us at various times. And I certainly understand the frustration, also understand the expediency and the financial benefit of having some meetings by Zoom. Sammy, I see your hand. I'll let you please go ahead.
Thank you, President-elect. So one point I want to highlight, and I had those conversations with several board members and also a member at large who was a former president like 20 years ago or something like that. And they asked why did you transition to virtual? And my question was, well, how many in-person meetings you had? And they had the same number of in-person meetings that we have, 3 to 4 per year. And the extenuating circumstances and the expediency of virtual really helped us gather within a quorum as an executive committee, decide to call meetings for the board whenever we need to meet in a way that is only practicable through virtual. I think for us to meet in person with the frequency we met in the past 12 months is just, I would say, not really equitable for our volunteering board members. So the question at hand is whether this executive committee think it's something that we need to uplift to the full board for discussion, or maybe some education about an expectation what the board of OSBA usually aspire to do in terms of frequency of meetings. So I think there is some communication that we might be able to do before we go into a full board discussion on this, which is, here's the expectation for 2025. We're expecting to meet this much in person and this much virtual if there's any. And we ask, do they feel that is okay? Because I think the impression is coming from extenuating circumstances of the past 12 months. Thanks. So with that, sorry. So to conclude with that, I'm not in favor of pushing it to the full board before we do some outreach and communication and maybe discussion for us for expectations for how the next year looks like. Sorry. Back.
Thank you, Sammy. Any other thoughts? Dawn, Sonia?
Yeah, so I appreciate the question and the concern. I think I think this last 12 months have been extraordinary in the amount, the number of meetings, and that just pertains to the business at hand. I think that it's a reasonable, I think it's a reasonable expectation what we've been doing the past couple of years. Part of it was because of the pandemic, and other circumstances where we kind of utilized the opportunity to have a virtual meeting. First, it's cost effective. This is a very large board. We're talking about members from around the state. So that's a whole other layer. We have a lot of other concerns on the other side of the coin about expenses, travel costs, and those things. So that is also something to consider. So I think it's prudent for this committee to have a robust discussion before we bring it to the board, where there's a lot of new members who may not understand the history, and also may not have a clear understanding of the expense and cost, and just the pure logistics of putting a large board like this together more than 3 or 4 times a year. It's really not. I don't think it's reasonable to require that, and I think that there are several times a year where we meet in coordination with the LPC, and just because of the nature and the size of that group, in addition to that, one is in person and the other is virtual, if I'm not remembering that correctly. So I think first there needs to be some education about that, and most of us here are privy to the costs and what we've done in the past before we have a discussion with the full board. I appreciate the question, but I think what we've done is more cost effective. But that's just my thoughts. So
Thank you, Sonia. Dawn.
I was going to say pretty much what Sonia said. She said it very nicely. Thank you, Sonia. I think a lot of the board members do not know the cost, because when I've mentioned how much in-person meetings cost, they're like, what? And I think back, we've been talking about cost a lot when we were talking about dues, and travel expenses have really gone up the last few years. And so I just don't think that is noted. And like Sammy had said, we didn't only traveled a few times a year. And so I would be for additional conversation, but I think maybe send something out to the members to let them know, or to not the members, the board of directors, let them know like the costs and how many meetings we used to have and how many meetings we have now and which meetings will be in person and not. And I don't know if it's just because they're wanting to be in person or if they're having technical difficulties. So that would be kind of something interesting to find out. But I think definitely giving them some data so that they can know what's going on, because I think that we forget sometimes. Also, when I was thinking about it, and I talked to Emily Nishchik, and I think staff is looking at this, the calendar is kind of like a gap, like we're in person and then there's a long row and then we're not in person. And then like right now, it's like we had summer conference, and I know we're changing this. It's summer and then national and road show. And like, it's like we see each other and then it seems like it's a big gap. And so I'm wondering if maybe that's part of it as well. And maybe that's something that staff is looking at to make better for them, because when it's all in a gap for us, it's all in a big clunk for them too, and it makes it harder. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Emily. And then Sonia, you have your hand raised. Did you want to speak after Emily?
yeah, if I could, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Emily.
It is something that we're looking at changing. I think in long session years that becomes super challenging. So that's something we're trying to navigate. But I think that sharing with the board the overall costs would be really important, because I do think that folks don't completely understand that. And then I have a question in terms of when all of the meetings were in person. Did you all travel in for just a 3-hour meeting, or were they longer meetings? They were longer. Okay. Because the flip side of this is that I've heard from many school board or many board members is that they're able to attend more because they're virtual. And so I think balancing, on both ends of that is really important. And for someone who maybe is a caregiver at home or something like that, stepping away and traveling overnight can be really challenging. So I feel like having that balance meets both needs, because one thing that we've learned for sure is hybrid is not ideal. Like, all virtual is so much better in terms of participation and being able to have people be included or in person, but trying to bring in that hybrid component. So if we went to all meetings in person, but you had people who couldn't travel in, then all of their experience is going to be subpar, because especially when we're talking engagement, it's just really hard and we have all the technology, we've done all the things, and it's not the same. And so that would be my concern, is if you had a handful of people that were consistently just having the hybrid experience, that's really going to dampen their experience within the team.
Very good point. Yeah, hybrid is the least satisfactory, because you're left out. There's just no way. Even when you've got Dawn, who's an amazing advocate, you're left out. So Sonia.
Yeah, so the other thing I was going to mention, I've done a lot of work across the state with regional teams in my work, and just considering that there have been some connection issues for board members around the state, that maybe if we're able to partner with their local districts and have them perhaps like join a meeting from their district office, or there's some way we can make that kind of a regional an option, just so that we kind of eliminate any kind of barriers there may be, instead of someone working in home in a rural area and they have lack of access or weak access. That might be something to consider. So, and I agree on the hybrid. I think it's difficult.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. Yeah, you know, from a rural area, I can tell you that I, like everyone else, love in-person meetings, but I can tell you that I would not be able to participate if I was expected to be in person at every meeting. It just is completely, it'd be a huge burden. I'll just say that. And so I think, Sonia and Emily, you brought up caregivers. We do have people on our board who are in that state, and their participation is, they have to make a lot of arrangements in order to be at an in-person meeting, which they can do. But if we expected that all the time, it would, I think, mean that some people would have to get off of the board, because they just simply would not be able to do it. So I think it's it's trying to provide an equitable experience for everyone. And the combination, I think, right now that we're doing some meetings in person, and that is incredibly valuable, but then also having that calendar that allows for some Zoom meetings, it really makes it much more accessible to a wider variety of people. I love Sonia's idea of maybe partnering with school districts, because we are seeing that. I think we have some members who are struggling with getting access to all the materials and staying connected. And so that might be something that we elevate a little bit and maybe work on that a little bit, even in the regional meetings, talking about board members needing to stay engaged and giving that as an option. That could be a really good thing. But I think what I hear is a consensus that this executive committee feels like the main thing to do at this point is to educate our members, the board members, on what the calendar really is, and that we really haven't eliminated regular meetings. We're still meeting the same amount in person, and the cost of those meetings, and trying to be good stewards of the funds that we have at our disposal. And then also making sure that we do everything we can to help board members come prepared, either virtually or in person, to meetings, so that they really, because that's a big source of frustration when they have expressed that they haven't been able to access something. So it's going to take some individual work, I think. But I think we're saying that we feel like we don't need at this time to elevate this to a board discussion, that we want to just educate our board as to what the plan is. And hopefully we will not be having the same number of meetings this next year. had in the past. Anything else? Sammy?
Just as a what's next as an actionable item to the sentiments of what you shared, may I suggest unanimous consent of this executive committee to authorize the staff to prepare communication to the effect of the points that you shared, and then we share that with the board and open for board members an opportunity to submit questions, concerns, follow-ups to me, and I'll pass them to the executive committee or to staff, and they pass them to the executive committee. Does that sound agreeable?
That sounds great.
I would,
Dawn?
I was just gonna add, I'd like to put something in there as well about that some board members travel time too, because I think that that's sometimes overlooked, like, you know, I was talking to Sammy and Ephraim when I was in Salem, and I'm like, I gotta go, I'm not gonna be home until after 10, and they're like, what? And so I think that people don't realize, like, that's a whole day, like 12 hours to, you know, there and back to come home. And I don't think people realize that's the commitment that some people are doing just in their car.
Well, Dawn, you have to drive faster than 25 miles an hour. Just saying,
Hey!
in the Cybertruck. Yeah, that's a great point. All right. Sammy, you're here. I think you should take over the meeting, my friend.
Thank you for handing the virtual gavel. Yes, I have my packet in front of me, but it feels better if I'm not presiding. I can opinionate more. So maybe this is better. So I talk less. So thank you and appreciate that. I just wanted to note for the record, Emily Smith is excused. She shared her apologies that she might be able to make it or might come late for extenuating circumstances. So with that, are we good to move on from point 3? Staff, do you have any questions for us? Or thumbs up if you feel you have good directive. Sounds good. So next item on the agenda is receiving feedback on previous board meetings. As a reminder, in the packets, you have another survey result for the past meeting, and we have received evaluation for previous meetings as well during our executive committee meetings. So with that, Emily Nishik, would you like to add any perspectives or additions to that?
Just note that this last one for September was pretty significantly different than the last feedback that we've received for the last few meetings. So was really happy. You know, we didn't get a ton of responses, but the ones that we did get, I think, were pretty positive overall. There's some concerns that are raised in there that I would encourage you to look at mostly around the caucuses and how many, and I know that's on the agenda later today too. So, but we'll just say that overall the feedback and just in terms of the individual conversations that I've had, I think people really enjoyed, one, the site seemed to be very conducive to people being able to just kind of relax a little bit and spend time together, which was great. And then overall seemed like it was a pretty productive meeting for people and a good use of their time. So that's what I would highlight in there.
Thank you. Anybody else? Chris, I see you unmuted.
Oh, I just congratulations to the few people who responded to the survey. I missed out, but I just think that the feedback I heard is people went away feeling really good about the weekend and their work and their relationships, that were really moving in the right direction. And all of it was just well done, staff. Well done. You all worked so hard, but it was just a wonderful time together. And so I think we did make progress.
Anyone else? Questions, comments, or what's next?
Yeah, I just forgot. I didn't get a chance to respond to the survey, but I did enjoy. I thought it was a great conversation. It was facilitated well. Well done, Mr. President. And the staff also did a really great job. So it was a really good convening. So
Anybody else? I want to say probably this is the best meeting or convening I've been at OSBA since I joined, hands down, in terms of really camaraderie, in terms of really intense discussion in a positive way to get into a result, and everybody leaned in with their opinions and perspectives. In terms of the amount of work that we accomplished, in terms of really summarizing work of a year or years into the actions that we made and the connections that we fostered and the ability for us to connect with each other. All of that was just really great. Like I would say this meeting and probably when we were meeting, I think in Salem at the ESD when we had the equity work session, that's another top one. So really thank you, team, and we can only get better and better with this. So appreciate staff preparation and work toward it, all the way from the flowers to the planning to the mindful space of do nothing or just connect with each other. It's really put us in a good mindset. I have in my notes here about the values that I know Emily and staff are going to continue working on, and that we're going to see in the later meetings. Some follow up on that. And definitely our discussion with Salam has been very helpful. So again, thank you for being part of this successful progress that we've made over the year. Any further comments? See none. Legislative Roadshow updates with Emily Nishik. Oh, sorry.
No, Sammy, I was just gonna say, really, it all boiled down for me to the fact that you were wearing shorts on Sunday. I think it just it just relaxed everybody to see you so comfortable. So I'm sorry.
Thank you. Well, if my wearing shorts will solve problems, I'll consider me an all every day. Speaking to that, and on a serious note, I received some really constructive feedback about organizing the meeting and presiding over the meeting. So really appreciate those feedbacks that I had one-on-one with board members, especially toward the discussion with the Pride Caucus. So appreciate all of that feedback that was shared with me personally, or even over the survey. But definitely consider me in for the shorts. Next item is Legislative Roadshow update. Emily.
Yeah, this is more of just kind of a reminder. We did have our first roadshow at Willamette ESD last Monday. And for that one, since it was local here, and it was our first one with the new team, it was Haley, myself, Adrian, and Efren were all there. There were several staff that came too, so that was nice. Board development is trying to make it to as many as they can that don't require overnight stay, so that they can be connecting with board members and kind of getting their services out there more into the community. So we're trying to do a little bit more promotion on our policy and board development work, just so that all board members know that that's available. That's also newer. We'll be carrying their materials with us around the state and having that available for all of the board members. And we can stay and chat and answer questions and stuff like that. So we'll be drawing some attention to that work. So we're not just sharing about the legislative work that we do. Overall, it was really well received. We received good feedback. We're sending out surveys and a follow-up email afterwards to try and capture more of folks' feedback as we go along and their information. So we're trying hard to get cell phone numbers and email addresses for board members that will then help us with our legislative work and just better direct communication with our members. And then we kick off next week on the 14th with 5 visits across the state. And then we're pretty much on the road until convention, or at convention will be our last one with Multnomah County, which is new this year. So if you're there and want to stop by, that's usually one of the bigger ones that will be on site at the Marriott this year. They'll already be, a lot of them will already be there because the ESD is having their little convention at the event too. So it just kind of worked out on timing wise that we'll actually host it there at the event. Anything you would add, Haley?
I thought it went really well, and we received positive feedback on it, and So I'm glad that we all did that as a team, and thank you, Sammy, for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Haley. And this time, I don't have Dr. Who's equipment to attend simultaneously meetings, so I'm not going to make it to all 20 yet. But my intention is to make it to 14. And really, the way the design of the material, printed material, the design of the presentation, and really the distribution of the presentation on during the Salem meeting was really top notch. Again, I'm not saying a hyperbole here. It's a top meeting since I joined 2017 school board and attended regionals. It was really well organized, and I know Emily and Haley are working on improving. But so far, I'm really optimistic of the value added of those legislative roadshow. Really distributed work with everybody is sharing perspectives, celebrating the good work, and understanding the business of OSBA, the resolutions, and also understanding the business of the legislature and how we can advocate. Really optimistic that this month is going to be productive for our staff. Emily?
I will just add one other kind of change this year. Haley and I are reaching out to all of the ESD superintendents who are hosting ahead of time to have just kind of connection calls with them, since we're a newer team out there, letting them know who's coming. And hoping to do a little bit more relationship building while we're out in the community. If there is a superintendent or area that you think would really benefit from some individual outreach, even if it's not the hosting ESD, but a different one there. I know Adrian's looking at like visiting some schools and kind of using a little bit more of our time while we're there. So just shoot us a note if there's one that you think it would be really beneficial that we make sure we connect with. And then we are doing a little more excuse me, personalization in those regions who have asked for that. So trying to be flexible.
Thank you, Emily. On that note as well, I've been checking in with regional OSBA directors and see, hey, are you coming? And just make sure that they know, like I look forward to see them. So definitely, I look forward to share with you, Emily, a few suggestions about regional superintendents and some challenges I heard that they're navigating. Team, anything to add or ask? So as a reminder, help me out, Emily, the newest policy, our officers are able to attend their regions only or any region?
They can attend within their region, or that regional representative can have a delegate. I think like Steve Bull isn't able to travel, so I know Chris Cronin's covering some of his.
Cool. All right. Anything to ask or add? See none. Next item on the agenda is review November Board of Directors meeting agenda. You have an agenda suggested to your consideration at pages 6 and 7 of the packet, and also shared on the screen here. As a reminder, this is a brief meeting that we usually hold after the convention on Sunday morning. Emily, do you want to add anything specific about this one? I know general idea and perspective is to keep it really short and high level, and really a reflection and celebration and voting on important policies that we have. But Emily, do you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, we tried to put only things on there that kind of need to happen based on timing. So you'll see the policy on there. That one's around the Budget and Finance Committee for the board to consider and take action on. The other one that's going to be newer for you all is the school investment pool. And Jeff Carew from PMA has asked for some time on our agenda to just share what their leading work in Oregon on starting an investment pool that schools could invest in and have more earnings on. It'll require a legislative fix, and so he's working on that kind of separately, but it's COSA, OSBA, and us would be the kind of convening organizations. And he just wants to do, it's far off, but wanted to bring the board in on it and give you all a really brief update or information share on what a school investment pool is and why it would benefit school districts in Oregon. So he's just asked for 15 minutes on the calendar or on the agenda just to be able to give a really brief high-level information share. And then he's working separately on the legislative fix that would be required through this next long session. But just wanted to bring you all into those conversations. We're not committed to anything. It is just an information share and get a sense of where the board sits with that. He has presented to the COSA Executive Committee on this already, and Jackie's been working pretty closely with him, the executive director of OSBA. It's another revenue opportunity for school districts to be able to invest their funds where they could have larger earnings.
Questions, suggestions? Sorry, I'm not gonna go to the weeds, but Emily, if you can report back to Jeff, a question I suspect is gonna be raised is if the legislative fix will include any restrictions or no restrictions on PERS set asides, and whether pension funds or PERS retirement funds will be allowed to be put into the pool or not. That's a curiosity I have. I think it's gonna be important. Just want to share that early on if they can talk about it.
I can, yep.
Awesome. Anything else about the agenda? All right, I think this is something for an action, board members.
You want a
Sure.
motion?
Yes, motion for approval of the agenda.
Mr. President, I move to approve the agenda for the Sunday, November 10th meeting as presented.
I second.
And hold up a second, Emily. Do you have something to add or?
I don't believe we typically take action on this. It's just a review, and then that way we can, I'm just double checking on here.
I'm very sorry.
As changes may come up, it's a more of a review. There's no action on the agenda.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. So without objection, we'll table the motion with the expectation that staff will move forward with the agenda. See, there's no objection. The motion is tabled. Sorry about that. Cool. One thing I shared with Emily, and I just want to share it with you, is as practicable, if the meeting room can be changed from what we had last year, just to make sure we have a different setting. That might be something we will look forward to, just so we have a fresh start. And I think it's really trauma-informed thing that we try our best to do it. Totally respectful and mindful of the limitations of the building and our reservations, but if we can, maybe we'll try to do that. OSBA board recognition at annual convention. Emily.
Yeah, so this actually was raised by another board member after our retreat, and had asked if we would consider not having all of the board members go up on stage during the recognition piece. They shared that they were not on the board last year and were just an audience member, and felt pretty disconnected during that time, and had recommended that have the board members stand in the audience and be recognized from there, dispersed throughout, with other audience members. That was just a recommendation that they had brought forward. And in talking with the team would be on board with that. It's challenging to get everybody where they need to be when they need to be, and just how the session is going to go this year. Typically, the board stands up there during the Pledge of Allegiance, and this year they would also be standing up there with the land acknowledgement. And so it would be quite a long time that board members would be standing behind. And so just wanted to offer that up there. The team is ready and willing to do either. I think I do see more frequently now standing from the audience and being recognized. But I wanted to bring that to this group as, you know, it impacts you all and your recognition for all the hard work that you put in throughout the year.
Committee members. Chris,
I'm 1000% behind standing in the audience. I've always thought that was sort of weird, to be honest. I mean, yeah, I'm happy. I don't, I think that it's good for people to, for us to stand up so that people can see that we're there. But it's just a little. So, yeah, I'm happy to dispense with that custom.
any other committee members? Done.
I agree with Chris. When I first got on the board a few years ago, I had some members that were not on the board of directors and said, that seems like a really outdated tradition. It seems pageanty. And they kind of were like, it just seems outdated, like we're parading members around, and they just thought it was kind of weird and like something you would do in the 80s and not now. So I've heard that throughout the years, and I think it would be fine standing, just standing from the audience. I hopefully everybody would be happy with it, because it is a lot more work for staff and it, you know, so.
Sonia, you want to have the last word?
Yeah, I guess. You know, I think what we do is we duplicate what we see at the national level. I mean, there is for me, I think there is the ability to be recognized as a regional representative. I think that that's important, and people seeing who you are, and you can easily do that from the audience, but you can also do that from the stage. As I'm outgoing, I have never had anyone say they had a problem with it or were embarrassed by it. But if you all want, that is the way you want to trend. That's a trend you're going towards, where you don't want to have that recognition on the stage. That's fine. But I've never had any problem with it. I've never heard of anybody having a problem with it. And it's also duplicated at the national level. So I don't have a vote either way. It just seems a little off to be put off by it, but whatever you guys decide.
Thank you, Sonia. Probably it's not the last word, because there might be some further discussion on the notes that you shared. I will build on that. I am also fine either way. I think just to counter, to evaluate the arguments, not necessarily to advocate for it, is one value I've seen recognizing board members on a stage, or just their picture and region on the screen, even if they stand from the audience, is the value of, oh, you're a board member and I see the blue badge on your shoulder. Let me talk to you about what's going on in my region or my district. So really allowing at the beginning of the convention for folks to be known and to be stopped in the lobby and to have a conversation. Without that recognition, it might be a little bit harder. Maybe the badge will help if everybody wears their badge. That's the benefits and value I see there, and also the other points that Sonia mentioned. So with that, I want to go back to staff and Chris and Don. What do you think?
I'll just speak up. My only concern is that I think if we do that, we need to let people know ahead of time and the reasoning behind it, just because I don't want anyone to feel like they were shocked. I don't know, someone may look forward to standing on stage every year, and they might be disappointed. So that would be my only concern. I don't want anyone to be disappointed as well. So if it's a choice that we make, I would like to make sure that it was known to everybody, so someone's not disappointed.
Okay. Thank you, Chris, and then Emily.
Um, I think Sonia and you too, Sammy, make a good point about us being available to the membership. I think I recognize that that's part of our role as board members is being available. And so there are probably ways to do that, the picture or something, or in the program. I don't know. There's probably ways to do that. And I'm sort of a person, I just sort of go along with whatever the tradition is, and I understand. I think that maybe we might have moved on from that particular tradition. But I don't know, maybe, yeah, like Dawn said, maybe there are people that will be disappointed that that won't happen. But I do think we should do something to make sure that we as board members are recognizable to others. I think that's really important.
Emily?
This is why I wanted to bring it to this group and not just make a decision. I think maybe this isn't the year for the change, and one reason is we did tell the board members in September that that would be part of it. And so we could prepare them the next year to let them know that there's a change. The other thing that is going to be a big visual change this year is we're not having the head table. And so they'll be down in front, and that might feel, so I'm very mindful of just how much change we can do at one time with it. So without people losing that like tradition and connection. That was one that like all the feedback across the board was, this is so uncomfortable. I don't want to eat up there. For the people who are sitting up at the table. So that one I felt pretty, and I guess that had been consistent feedback over the last several years. So I felt okay doing that one. But I think if this one's kind of split within this group, I think my recommendation would be this isn't the year, and then we prep the board for it in September if that's what we want to move towards.
Chris?
Can we have superhero capes? Just kidding. Just kidding.
We can just take Sammy's.
For
Yeah, Sammy, can you share your cape?
I can, happy to do it. So for you, Chrissy,
Now he's
Chrissy,
sharing.
I don't know if you were there in the national. They gave all the board members of NSBA and the presidents of the association literally superhero capes with NSBA behind it, and asked us to storm into the stage. So yeah, that's probably
Not
what's
fair.
gonna do that. We can do it if you insist. Done.
Thank you. I was gonna say,
Emily's saying no.
I do not need a cape. I would probably trip and fall. So, I was just gonna say maybe let the members know for like before, because I'm a real visual person, and so let everyone kind of know, hey, we're probably not gonna do the walk on stage, but why at convention think of what would be a good alternative or something, because sometimes when I'm there in the moment, my brain thinks better than in my house, not in the moment.
Sounds good. I am agreeable to the proposal of a gradual change. Maybe we do it on the stage this time and share with the board this is the intention for next time. And maybe use that as a reminder, like, hey, even if whether you're on stage or not, wear the badge all the time. So people recognize the staff and people recognize OSBA board members wherever they are in sessions or whatever. I think that might be a really good reminder for them to be available with their badges. Yeah. Emily, do you feel comfortable moving forward with this? Thank you so much. And
So we're keeping it, right, for this year, just to be clear. Yeah,
I
Yes.
think that's what
Yeah.
you're leaning for, right?
okay,
Sounds
yep.
good. Perfect. Awesome. Next item is a request from Don to add an agenda on the executive committee to discuss the evaluation of caucuses model. As a reminder, this is not for an action, but for a discussion and for potential follow-up, gathering information or a plan of how to move forward. So this is the first time we discussed this after it was shared a few times as comments during board meetings. So with that, Don, I'll give you the floor to share the intention of this agenda item.
Thank you. I just put this on the agenda because it was mentioned at the conference, and I know I mean, at the retreat, and I was one of the people that had mentioned it. So I just kind of wanted to make sure that we follow through with it. It's something that I think that we'll probably need to do work on in the beginning of the year. I think there's a lot of questions from people about how the caucuses is going. I think we have a rather new board, and I think a lot of us weren't on the board when the original caucus, the color caucus was. So I think just some history of why the color caucus, what is the purpose of a caucus. I hear a lot of the times that, you know, we're one of the first states, but sometimes it's good to reevaluate. And so I was just kind of having like some history background of what's going on, and is it, you know, kind of some data if it's working. I heard like during the retreat that people were saying, well, we get together with people that are like us, and I think that that's important, but I'm not sure that was the actual mission of the caucus. So I just kind of wanted to just see about what we've done so far on data, and just bring it out there that I think we need to have some kind of discussion in the next year about them, especially if we're going to add more caucuses. I think also it seems like a lot of the caucuses are doing scholarships, and so I'm wondering if we're leaving people out. I mean, I just have lots of questions about the model and what's going on. Is it working best? And I'm sure other people do too. So that's all I just kind of wanted to bring up, so we can make a plan for the next year so we could get some of these questions answered.
Thank you, Don. Comments, questions, Sonia?
Yeah, so I appreciate the concern and the questions. What I want to be sure is that if we are evaluating the caucus model, if we potentially have 3 caucuses next year, there needs to be an evaluation process for all 3 and not just the color caucus. Again, what I will say is that there's an opportunity with this very young board and experience that does not know about the history of the caucus. With the work we've done, the goals, they're in alignment with OSBA. Sammy and I just did a presentation a couple weeks ago about the history of the caucus. There's lots of demonstrated goals and achievements that are, again, aligned with the mission of OSBA. So I think what we need to do first, and as I'm exiting this board, I think it's important to educate this board about our mission, our goals, our values, and how those caucuses that have been created and formed are aligned with that mission. So if you're going to evaluate, we'll need to start paying attention to the quarterly reports you get from the caucus leadership that you get every year. Look at those, and you'll see that the goals and things that we have created are in alignment with that. So there isn't a lack of information. There just needs to be there needs to be an understanding that information is there, is accessible on the website. And then in terms of how you're going to evaluate, it needs to be based on the goals and the vision of the caucus. And I'm sure that you guys will do a great job at evaluating. But I just want to caution and remind that they were approved by the membership, and they are the goals and the mission. And even the achievements are in alignment with the goals of OSBA. And there's a lot of data and a lot of information, and a lot of members that can speak to what's been done, the accomplishments. We've achieved quite a bit. So there's a lot of information there that'll be shared, and I'm hoping that that will be shared and understood.
Thank you, Sonia. Chris?
Thank you, Sonia. That you're part of the very origination of it. I would just further discuss the fact that I remember some discussion with the caucus model is the only model that has been presented for members who wish to elevate the voice. And so, there's concern about that. And I think what I think I would like for us to this would be an opportune time to just take a step and make sure that this is the model that is accomplishing what we all want the caucuses to accomplish. And Sonia, you're right. I mean, the most well-established caucus is the color caucus, and they were the pioneers in all of this. And I was involved with the rural caucus recently. I think it's probably, in any healthy organization, it's probably a good idea to just take a step back and see if this is actually accomplishing everything that we need it to accomplish, or if there's a better way. And that's my thought, is there something better? And maybe there's not. And this does not take away the good work that has been done, but I just think we might need to rethink how we want our organization to function in the very highest way possible. I don't know that I have an answer. I want to ask the question.
Thank you, Chris. Could you elaborate more on one comment you made about there were stated concerns that the caucuses share the voice of their members and they are the only way to uplift those voices? Was that a concern, that like that caucuses are exclusively speaking on or what is?
Well, I think you're referring to something I said during our retreat, and you know, I believe that as members of the board of directors of the OSBA, we all share a joint responsibility in elevating the voices of any students or staff members or people involved in our educational system who might be marginalized. And we should all take that responsibility seriously, that there shouldn't be an excuse for me, Chris Cronin, to absolve myself of responsibility for the LGBTQ community. We should all share that. And so I wonder, that this is just a wondering. I'm not saying I have answers. I'm just wondering if this is the best model, because I think to some extent in our heads, we absolve ourselves of responsibility and we don't think we have to worry about it. And we should be, in my vision of how this board would function optimally, we would help each other to become more knowledgeable and more informed. And then we would all become advocates at the highest level we possibly can for all of our students. And so instead of division, we would have unity. And I'm not saying that we do, but I'm just, that would be the vision that I have. Hopefully that makes some sense.
It does. Thank you. Any other comments or thoughts?
Yeah, give me a second. So one thing I will say is I think my concern, as I look back at the 5 years of creating the caucus, it was created out of a need to provide support for students of color, for board members of color, to convene, to educate, to advocate at the legislative level, the local level. And it was created because there was a desperate need. And it's also in alignment again with our equity. So what I've heard in conversation from members offline is, oh, I don't understand. I don't know why we're doing equity. I don't think we need to focus on equity. You know, we can support all students. But again, we need to be sure that if you are considering evaluating and dismantling a body of work that is in alignment with equity, then you're going to have to relook at your equity. And again, this is a young board. This is a board that may not have a clear understanding or clear support of equity. If you start dismantling the way that we've been trying to provide access and support and advocacy for equity, then you're going to be out of alignment with what we have created. And so you're going to have to start all over again. And that is my cautioning and my concern. So I'm just going to leave it there.
Thank you, Sonia. And I believe you're also referring to the call for equity that we passed in
Yep.
January 22.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thanks. Don?
Thank you, Sonia, for sharing that. Yeah, I want to be clear that I never wanted to dismantle the caucuses. Is the caucus model, the model that's working for everyone? And, that's kind of just the question that I have. My background is with special ed, and in my own experiences, I have seen where in the special ed community, they make separate things to help. And sometimes that puts you in a silo and you're not working with other people. And so I just want to make sure, like for me, my concerns are, is the color caucus getting support from everybody? Are these caucuses going to work in a silo? Are we doing accidental things that aren't maybe what's best for the organization? I don't know the answers to the question. And that's why I just wanted conversation. I understand it's a young board and I understand this is a really sensitive topic. And I do not want anyone to feel like all their hard work they've done with all the caucuses is being looked upon because it's not a good thing. I just want to make sure that all their hard work is actually paying off and they are getting what they wanted at the beginning. That's kind of my purpose of that. And from my understanding, when we first started the caucuses, we didn't think, people had told me they didn't think there was going to be multiple caucuses. And so just kind of look at the plan. If we how many caucuses can we support? What does that look like? Is there another model? I mean, I just have a lot of questions. I just want to clarify, nothing against the caucuses that are gone and nothing against the hard work that people have put in. I just want to make sure that we're doing what's best for everybody.
Thank you, Don. And time check, we're 2 minutes away from the top of the meeting, the half hour. Emily?
Yes, Haley had to jump to another meeting. I think that it would be helpful. I do think your concerns about how many, and if that's a conversation for the board to have first, because if these bylaws, pass, that the proposed bylaws passed, within there is some of those accountability mechanisms that you all are asking for, and we've taken the step to put it in the bylaws, so it feels preemptive to have a conversation around what do we do with those without giving it the year to evaluate and get that information and feedback. But I do think that it would be important for the board to have the conversation around how many, and if we want to have a pause before we get another request in, because we know that that's likely going to I mean, I would be surprised if we didn't. And so to have that conversation first, so that we're having a thoughtful conversation, not necessarily based on what the organization or group or identity is, but truly around the caucus and how many do we want? I know we have a defined number of board members within the bylaws, so that kind of helps with that a little bit, but I think that it would be really important to have that conversation ahead of time before we have another group or organization request an advisory committee, where then you're debating the topic versus what's feasible for the organization to manage.
Thank you, Emily. Any objection for extending 10 minutes? This is a really important discussion. 10 minutes, okay? All right, we're extending 10 minutes. Thank you, Emily. If I'm not mistaken, it is the discretion of the president to actually move forward with an advisory committee request when a board member requests that. If the president does not move forward with that, then you don't have a proposal for an advisory committee. Probably they can bypass that by that's my understanding of advisory committees. The president should move that forward. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's my recollection. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to say moratorium. I don't intend to initiate any advisory committee next 3 months. I don't know, Chris and Emily Smith, what's your intentions about it? But probably that would be a very important conversation before moving forward, is that we hear it loud and clear. And I think that would be a good thing to pause from initiating advisory committees on a specific affinity groups before we have probably either an advisory committee or the governance review process that happens every 3 years to look overall on the size of the board, number of caucuses, and so on and so forth. One thing I want to share is I want to utilize the equity statement that we have, and there are several elements here that I think are important. I hear loud and clear a few OSBA board members inherently believe that caucuses should not exist. And I understand that. I respect that they have a strong opinion about it. But the fact of the matter, our membership disagree. Our membership have approved 2 caucuses, and they voted for that. So that's one element of just pure majority democracy. Now, from an equity standard point of view, those mostly impacted by the caucuses need to have a higher and stronger voice and how they're benefiting from it, whether through quantitative data or anecdotal storytelling data that shares with us how they're benefiting from it. I personally would say probably my involvement with OSBA would have not been at this magnitude, or probably never been at all anything without the caucuses. It gave me an avenue to advocate for my peers. It gave me an avenue to actually build bridges beyond the caucus itself. And here I am. I feel there is a shared stories of other members who will share how their access to professional development from rural areas or professional developments from rural area to our summer conference have really benefited them and gave them better access. Same for many board members of color who were able to advocate through the caucus model. I think there is some communication and celebration and information sharing that needs to happen. Also, the accountability piece now is mandatory. It's been going on already in reports. Those reports are read, reviewed, we consent agenda, and we move on from them. Maybe we need to consolidate them somewhere and have them accessible. The presentation Sonia and I shared, probably we need to share that. And maybe we can go from there if we see the questions that were asked are answered with the information and the data and the stories that we already have. I think that would be really beneficial. And I would recommend maybe empower the caucuses to share more about how is it going for them first before we move forward with any possible commitments. That's my first suggestion. And maybe we can designate a few executive committee meetings and we pre-record them, and we do share outs from the presidents of the caucuses or the founders of the caucuses and have a little bit of perspective that we can share with others. I think that would be one thing I want to suggest. The other thing I want to suggest is maybe looking into best practices across other states as well and learn about things that we may not have been looking at. And there are some really good stories that I'm capturing and would love to share sometime in the near future. So these are some thoughts. What's next? Open question for all. What do you think? What's next?
Sorry, I'm trying to get my hand raised, and Mr. President, I'll just thank you for your summary. I would say that this is I appreciate this discussion. I appreciate Dawn for bringing it to our group, and I think this is perhaps a to be continued. And I would be interested in thoughts about an ad hoc committee that would perhaps be comprised of leadership from the 3 caucuses, but also some other board members to perhaps look at what's working well, what might not be working well, that kind of thing. But these are all just thoughts formulating in my head right now. But I think for this point, we've started the discussion. I would say we're just in the very, very, very early stages of anything. And as Emily pointed out, we probably need to let the process work.
Mhm.
and see how that meets perhaps all of the questions that people have may be answered by the new structures in the bylaws, the accountability pieces that will be in place. And so, but I appreciate the fact that it can be an ongoing discussion.
Thank you, Sonia.
Yeah, I think it should be. I think you should. I think what needs to happen first is that education piece. What I will also say is that the way that we have structured representation on the board, you've always had a representative of the caucus on the board of directors sharing information without a lot of like follow-up questions. So you have that resource there. On this executive committee, you have the past president of the caucus, you have a founding member of the caucus. So there are resources. I think that the first thing that needs to be happens, there needs to be an education. There needs to be a revisiting of your call to equity, being sure that this current board understands what that means. And then an education about the history and the goals and objectives of the caucuses that have been created. And then and then time to whether it's the presentation Sammy and I shared or creation of another presentation or just however that information needs to be shared with this board so they can learn about the history, the formation, the successes, the challenges, accomplishments of the caucuses that have been created. And then, of course, there needs to be an evaluation process. But I think just blindly, saying, well, there needs to be some type of accountability where I could walk up to any member of the board and they have no idea about the alignment or what our goals are. And it's all there. It's always been there. There's always been representation on this board. Sammy and I have been on this board together for a while now. Anytime you have a question about what we've done, we're there to share that with you. So my hope is that you pause, you educate, you revisit, and then you can move forward in looking at evaluation. But I don't think you can do that when you don't have board members who are not aren't even knowledgeable of first and foremost of why they were formed and how they're aligned with our vision and our goals. There needs to be some education first before you take action and evaluate something you don't understand. So.
Think we had really good, healthy conversation here, and I'll try to work with Emily on some follow-up convenings or actions that will help us move forward with this discussion and what kind of learnings we had from here. With that, I want to be very mindful of the time, and I'll just list the president's updates. It was an agenda item that I wanted to share with you and allow for any feedback. So I'm going to list them, and please give me a call if you have a question about any of them, or would you like to learn more about them. So I've been engaged with many activities and things that I do, and I felt it's important to just share with you about some of them as we go between one month and the other, so you're aware. Recently, as Sonia mentioned, the COSA Equity Symposium, we had a presentation. I attended the OCCA board meeting and shared with them the legislative roadshow agenda and also the resolution specifically, encouraging them to support the resolution, of course, for the dues and being open for any questions that they have. Don and I were there at the advocacy during legislative days and met with legislators and had really good relationship building and discussions around the priorities of OSBA and hearing about the priorities of legislators. I've been doing outreach to board members since 2020, I think. It's been more intensive right now with encouraging folks to fill in the advocacy survey, and that's Adrian have shared, and also check in with people if they're coming to the legislative roadshow. And sometimes they ask questions, and whenever they ask a question related to a service that OSBA provides, I connect them with those services. So it's been really great conversations that I've been having with board members all across the state. And I think that's it for now. A really brief overview, but if you have any questions, want to discuss any of them more, please let me know. Anything for the good of the order. or future executive committee agenda would you like to discuss? Seeing none, I just want to thank you, Chrissy, for being here as a and auditing the meetings. And please, if you have any feedback about this meeting or any questions or any follow-up or any perspectives, your perspectives are very valuable and would love to hear them from you. Maybe a follow-up call anytime with me and or Chris would be really valuable for us. So we make sure that you're ready to hit the road running on January 1st. With that, seeing there's no further business in front of the board without objection, sorry, in front of the committee without objection is now adjourned.